All right, so this video I'm going to talk a little bit about paint issues. What can happen to us if we have some paint issues? Here is one that I want to show you um, that this is what can happen. And so this was a garage door. It can happen to us on all different kinds of surfaces. This one here was in a let me see if I can pull it up here. This one here is in a little like the side by the door. You can see the paint has changed colors. And so this is a real concern that we definitely need to be worrying about. So that way, and I know that I said worry about, and yes, this can happen to us. And so we do want to do some testing. Before we do a painted house, we really want to test what it does. And the best thing to do is kind of go into a corner, go into somewhere and do a paint test. And usually this happens on hardy board. I've seen it happen on decks, like painted decks. It was a white paint, turned pink. And so we got to be careful with this. The best thing to do is if we do have hardy board, have it in your terms of conditions and don't be afraid to walk away. It wouldn't be a bad thing to have a 50-50 mix of a spray bottle. Go spray it in a corner somewhere. Go spray it somewhere that isn't going to hurt anything and see if it changes. Usually, if it's going to change, it's going to change pretty quick. If it does, then we need to walk away from that job. That's not a job that we need to be doing if this paint issue does occur. Um, you know, it has happened to several people that I know of, and it can happen to front doors. It can happen to different places. So most of the times this was a Sherwin-Williams paint, but not only Sherwin-Williams. There is also some other paints out there that this has happened to. So we definitely need to make sure that we're doing our test spots. If we do not do a test spot, there can be a lot of problems at the end of this. So we want to make sure that we are doing test spots. We're checking and double checking. If it does start to turn colors, it'll turn pink, it can turn green, it can turn all different kinds of colors. And what's happening is there's a pigment in the paint, and our bleach will bleach that pigment out, and that's what causes it. So for instance, we put pigment into apple wash or cherry wash or any of those that have the red color in them. But if we pour that, and that's a pigment in there, and if we pour that into bleach, that's why we can't put color in a bleach tank, because it eats that pigment up, and that's what the problem is. Well, it's doing the same thing onto this painted house. And 9 times out of 10, it's going to be hardy board. And even if it's oxidizing pretty bad, that can be a pretty good sign that you definitely want to do a test. Um, right now, it is Sherwin-Williams knows about it, but that doesn't mean that you won't be in trouble for it. So if this happens to you, make sure you got good terms and conditions to try to keep you out of it. I would maybe even consider going to a lawyer, looking and getting a good terms and conditions put up so that way you don't get in trouble for this problem. The best thing to do about it is do test spots. Do test spots so that way you can see what is doing and where is it doing it at. If it's doing it anywhere on that house, don't spray anything on that house. That is going to be an issue that you do not want to get into. If it happens, you can take a picture of it and say, listen, this has got the bad paint in it and that kind of stuff. I'm not saying don't do hardy board, but just be careful with hardy board. Most of your hardy boards are what's going to be the problem, because that is a painted surface. And so with that said, just make sure that you do your test spots. If you do your test spot, you can let it sit there 5-10 minutes, come back, rinse it off. If it does okay there, maybe do a couple more test spots. So that way, hey, I've tested it several places before I started. Nothing seemed to do it, and that. And usually when we do our test spot, I'm using a pretty strong SH. That's why I would put a 50-50 mix, 6% mix in a pump up sprayer. So that way I can say, hey, if it's going to react to that, then obviously it's going to react to anything. So just be careful out there. Make sure you're testing. I know that sometimes I scare people by talking about this, but if it happens to you, I mean, there's been pressure washers that have had to pay to get houses painted, and I don't want you to have to pay to get a house painted. So that's reason why I'm pushing this, and it's not just one person; it's several people have had to do that. So there's people that's been able to get out of it, or talk their way out of it, or let them know. You inform that customer in the beginning, but this is some things that you definitely got to look out for.